What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, Zaynomics Gaming. Today we have another Destiny 2 video for you guys. We are re-reviewing Vigilance Wing due to the recent changes inside of Destiny 2. In particular, this weapon received pre-deterministic recoil, and it essentially takes out the RNG of recoil patterns. It allows you to learn the recoil of the weapon. Now, there also have been some changes due to damage and stuff like that. So a lot of opponents now, they receive less body damage, higher crit damage, and that plays a part with the weapon as well. I've noticed that TTK drops off very terribly if you miss your crits, and that was a whole just change in general inside Destiny 2. So the weapon's going to look a little bit stronger if you hit all your crits, and that's the rewarding factor of that, but it doesn't really play a part in predeterministic recoil, and we're going to touch on that in a bit. Now, they actually mentioned these changes to certain weapon types back in September 21st. I believe that was a TWAB at that time, and that they were going to be adding deterministic recoil to a lot of weapons inside the game, but they just wanted to let the entirety of that season play out and see how it actually felt on certain weapons. Now they're starting to implement it on our older weapons, exotics, stuff like that. So that's where this buff has actually came into play. Now, Vigilance Wing was and still is one of the best pulse rifles in the game as far as consistency and how it actually performs. And we will talk about the perks just because that's what we do on this channel. Even though it's an old weapon, we're still going to outline some of the key traits and stuff that this particular weapon has. But I don't want anybody to get mixed up that this mainly is a deterministic recoil review off of Vigilance Wing. So now, from Bungie, way back when, they did state that these types of weapons will receive deterministic recoil, which are auto rifles, pulse rifles, scout rifles, submachine guns, sidearms, hand cannons, trace rifles, and machine guns. This includes all full auto weapons, as well as burst fire and semi-automatic primary ammo weapons. These weapons will recoil in a predictable way with sustained fire, allowing players to learn the patterns and compensate for them. You may have seen similar systems in other games, but our implementation is quite different because we release so many weapons a season and drive their gameplay via stats. Importantly, in this case, recoil direction and stability. The goal of the system is to make each weapon feel unique with a recoil pattern that can be learned to a degree. This will enable players to truly master weapons in a way that wasn't possible with standard Destiny 2 recoil, which has a fair amount of randomness to it, aka RNG. Note that the pattern of the updated recoil is very similar each time, but not exactly the same. Here's how it works. A weapon is set up with a few possible recoil patterns. The weapon will always start with the first pattern. Most of the time, it will run through this recoil pattern until you stop firing for long enough to let the weapon's recoil and accuracy reset completely. Occasionally, somewhere in the first half of the magazine, it will switch to another pattern. Each bullet fired has a small amount of randomness to it due to the accuracy cone, aka error angle, placing the bullet somewhere in the radius around the target point. The entire pattern shifts left and right dependent on the weapon's recoil, with a higher recoil direction having smaller horizontal spacing. But even as a recoil direction and stat changes, the pattern will still be recognizable. See, and that's why we're going to talk about the perks, just because we're going to talk about the actual recoil pattern and actually what I do to make it more consistent, because as they state here, once you dip off the first half of the magazine, the recoil pattern is going to change just a little bit. So the way I was actually combating this to keep it actually more consistent, I was running traverse steps on the Warlock. I'd get a kill, run around, and I wouldn't have to worry about reloading because it automatically reloads, or you could reload and you'll still always have that similar recoil pattern throughout, just because it's pretty much the same at the first half of the magazine, and then it switches to another pattern. So I didn't want to get on two different patterns. I just wanted to play on one consistent pattern fully, if that makes sense. Now, a couple things before we continue. So basically what's happening here is, depending on the recoil of the weapon and certain other factors, predictability, accuracy, and everything else, the first half of the magazine will have a different recoil pattern compared to the second half, depending on if you actually stop firing. So for me, just so I can combat that and I don't have to worry about it, I run around with traverse steps like I just stated, and it'll automatically reload my weapon. Now, you don't have to 100% reload, because Bungie also stated that the recoil pattern will reset fully after you stop firing long enough for the weapon to fully settle. meaning that the accuracy cone has gone back to its default resting state. Typically when you reload, the weapon is idle for long enough for this to happen though. So when I'm reloading, it'll automatically, reset, and I don't have to worry about it. Now, there are some questions. What happens if I keep refilling my magazine while continuously firing? The implementation we've used has no upper limit to the length of recoil pattern. For example, firing an auto rifle with the Actium War Rig or another magazine refill method won't cause any weirdness. Now, they state this feature will not be exploitable, and I haven't seen any exploitable methods or anything like that. I just run what I run because I can stay stocked up on ammo. I don't have to worry about reloading, and it does take away that extra chance that my bullets will stray. It takes some of that randomness out of certain situations if I always have the full mag. So we basically have to go over this first part, that way you guys can actually understand what deterministic recoil is. It's been in the game, it's been with different weapons, but here recently it's been added to Vigilance Wing this past week. Now for me, I haven't really noticed any difference with weapons performance, particularly in the past. Now I have noticed some different variants with Vigilance Wing just because we also received different buffs here recently regarding the health of the players inside of PvP, the accuracy that they want. If you hit all your crits, you'll have a better time to kill, this, that, and the third. So I feel like that's kind of getting in the heads of a lot of different people with how well the weapon's actually performing. Obviously, if you hit all your crits, it's a 5-round burst. I mean, you could 2 burst the Guardians, no problem. Now, if you end up hitting a body, you're going to end up killing your TTK completely because you're only getting 16 damage per body compared to 27 to 24 damage per crit. So it's a big difference, and they might be hyping up the deterministic recoil. The weapon feels good. It is a little bit more predictable. I've noticed it floats a little bit more to the right, but we're going to talk about the weapon here more shortly. So now, before we talk about the weapon, we want to talk about the Crucible sandbox, because on March 5th we actually got a bump in health. So now instead of having 70 health, you have 100 inside of Crucible, and the shields went up between 116 to 130, which that's the same as it always been, but our health has went up by 30. So to compensate for this, there has been adjustments made across the spectrum to maintain the correct TTK. Now, where this makes a big change with how certain weapons interact is it increases your crit damage, to keep the same TTK that you had previously before this health bump, but you didn't get an increase in body shot damage. So they're really trying to flex for us to get crits instead of body shot, and that's where a lot of your damage is coming into play at. If you hit all of your crits and you got deterministic recoil on Vigilance Wing, you're like, wow, this thing's performing really good. And that's because you kind of got a nerf to body shot damage. Body shot damage now is going to hurt you tremendously on any weapon if you do not hit crits. They want in Crucible for you to be hitting crits at all costs, and that's why a lot of weapons feel a lot better, and I believe that's what the hype is around Vigilance Wing currently right now. And it's not like it's crazy overboard to where a lot of people are playing with it, but you'll see some other videos out there where they're describing Vigilance Wing as like really good and everything, and it still is a good weapon, but it's pretty much the same as it was before. Deterministic recoil, like I said, it feels like it's going off to the right for me, so I'm able to predict a little bit more where to aim. But other than that, the weapon still feels pretty much the same. Now, Vigilance Wing has been around since the beginning, vanilla Destiny 2, and the exotic perks it has is Harsh Truce. This weapon fires a 5-round burst. When a nearby ally is killed, gain health regeneration and increased movement speed. And we also have Last Stand, improved weapon performance and greatly increased recovery when its wielder is the last living member of a fire team, which is perfect for like competitive or Trials of Osiris. It is a kinetic pulse rifle, and it does have a 4.9 rating inside of PvP. Now the perks, the barrel perk is a corkscrew rifling. It has a +5 stability, +5 handling, and a +5 range. We also have alloy magazine for faster reloads. And then, like I said, we have Last Stand, and that basically helps you when you're the last living member. And then we also have composite stock. This weapon has a versatile dual purpose stock. It gives you a +5 in stability and a +5 in handling. Now the catalyst, and now that I'm actually looking at the results of this weapon, I'm looking at the recoil in particularly. It does have a 79, which does allow it to veer off to the right, which is the predictable recoil pattern that I had of this weapon when I've been playing since they've added deterministic recoil. It is shedding off more to the right for me. And of course, we'll mention too the rounds per minute that it fires is 530, magazine size is 30. Overall, it's a great weapon. It's fun to pick up and play with here or there. Definitely want to get the ornaments if you plan to play with it, just because it does have that clean sight with the ornaments, but you do have to purchase those from Eververse. Every now and then they do become for sale for Bright Dust, which is how I got mine. But other than that, it's an okay weapon. I wouldn't say it's out of this world, the best of the best, but it by far performs very well inside a Crucible. It's just an all-around workhorse, if I had to describe it. And if you are playing comp, it does give you those additional benefits, and it's been fun going back and playing with it. But I don't really see a major shift or a major change with Deterministic Recoil. Now, there is a major shift due to us having more health. It does feel less forgiving completely, just because the body shot damage is absolutely horrendous now. But that's across the board with a lot of weapons. So if you hit body shot with Vigilance Wing, you're going to be sitting there for a long time. In regards to TTK goes, you're definitely going to be pushing way over a second, just because you only do 16 per body. So, I mean, you do the math. Now, across the board, if you keep those body shots to a minimal, like very minimal, like I'm talking 2 to 1, somewhere in that neighborhood where you're pretty much hitting all crits, you can get a 0.7 time to kill very consistently. Now, if you're a tier 10 resilience to tier 4, if you just hit all bodies, you're going to be looking at a second, 1.3 seconds. Tier 3 and under, you're going to be looking at 1.2 seconds, just because all you're hitting is body shots. We do not want to hit body shots at all. Don't hit body shots whatsoever in this sandbox, otherwise you're going to get wrecked, especially if you're playing with other players that hit their crits a lot. I have seen a big uptick in hand cannons just because they're overall accurate. That's not to say that pulse rifles ain't no good, but we're definitely pushing towards a scout rifle / auto hand cannon meta, and that's kind of where we were a few years back. I want to say around Black Armory, just because those weapons felt so good, especially the 600 round autos. But yeah, that's going to do it for me, guys. Let me know in the comments down below if you have any questions, or if there's any other thing that I can learn. I don't know everything. I'm not some PvP god or anything like that, but I greatly appreciate everyone for watching. Like I said, the weapon feels good, but given the recent changes due to health, less forgiveness now, Deterministic Recoil, if you're able to master the weapon, it does feel phenomenal. But if you're just playing subpar, you're probably not going to really notice much of a difference. And that's the case for me. You know, I'm pretty subpar with this weapon. I don't really notice too much of a difference. But like I said, you definitely want to hit all of your crits. Now, that's going to do it for me, guys. What we're going to be reviewing next is Prosecutor from the Prophecy Dungeon, because they did get a loot refresh. So we're going to be grinding for those, and we're going to be going over certain roles for those. But we're going to be putting that weapon head to head to Amit AR2, just because they're both 450 round per minute auto rifles. Except Amit AR2 we can actually craft. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. We're going to be doing a head to head battle. Which weapon is the best? Should you just stick with the craftable role, or should you go into the Prophecy Dungeon and hunt down a Prosecutor? But like I said, that's going to do it for me, guys. I'll see you all later this week. And like I said, stay tuned for the next video. I hope you all have a wonderful week. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you like this type of content, definitely like this video and consider subscribing to my channel. We cover Helldivers 2 here recently, and we're also steadily doing Destiny content, so definitely stick around for that. I will have another Helldivers 2 video out this week, going over patch notes, all the updates, all the changes. If you watched my last video, we were like, hey, are we getting mech suits? We got mech suits now, so we'll definitely be covering all that. Strengths, weaknesses, different notes, patch notes, different buffs to abilities, stratagems, all that good stuff. And like I said, we're going to be grinding for Prosecutor, and we're going to be going head to head with Amit AR2. And like I said, I hope you all have a wonderful week. I'll see you guys in the next video.